Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, everybody tuning in to our live discussion here today. My name is Artis Ozoliņš, and I'm honored to moderate this very important discussion about the necessity and the predicted efficiency of the proposed alcohol sales restrictions. Over the past year, Parliament officials, health experts, and the alcohol and retail industries have all weighed in, discussed heavily on what should be done, to what degree, and specific solutions have been proposed, and we will go through them here today. And this promises to be a very, very intriguing discussion, so I hope you all stick with us, because I think in society there are a few topics on which we all absolutely have our opinion, whether it is directly concerned with us or not. I can think of a few topics. We all know how we want to raise our children, right? We have them or we don't. We know how to raise them. We all think we could better handle the budget of our country. We all know where we should put the money. And of course, we all have our opinion on alcohol, whether we use it or not. I think there are a few topics like this in society where we all have our opinions. So I hope that you, dear viewers, also share your opinions and share, most importantly, your questions here today for us to discuss, because you have this opportunity in the live stream comment section. Please do send in your questions whenever they will show up on my tablet right here, and I hope we can incorporate them in our discussions here today. So please do send them in, and you can also send them in both in Latvian, both in English. Today we will take this discussion in English, but afterwards the recording of this discussion will be published online on the portal Atbildīgi LV, or responsibly LV, but Atbildīgi LV is the website, and there we will also publish this discussion with subtitles in Latvian. So if you have missed out on anything, don't worry, we will provide the opportunity to scroll back. And of course, I'm not alone in today's discussion. I would like to introduce dear participants who have found their time and came here to speak on this very important topic. And first of all, she is the member of the Social and Labor Affairs Commission of the Parliament here in Latvia, Mrs. Zane Skuiņa-Rubene. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Next up, he's the Executive Director of the Latvian Alcohol Industry Association, Mr. Dāvis Vītols.
Hello, thank you.
Next up, I would like to introduce to all of you the head of the procurement division at the store chain Lats, Mrs. Tatjana Krolle.
Hello.
And joining us here today, a very special guest. He is the research associate at the University of Cambridge, Dr. Gregor Svern. Hello, Gregor.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And Gregor, I would like to start off with you, because I know that you and your colleagues have worked very hard on putting together a very comprehensive research, and I believe that this research could be a very good ground to start off our discussion. So please, we do turn to you. You have our digital stage. What have you found out? What are your findings?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I want to add another topic, because you said everyone's talking about how to raise children. An important topic would be football. At least in Austria, everyone knows how to play football and do it better. Now it's a turn to alcohol. So what I'm presenting here, you already introduced me, quickly say it as well. So I'm a research associate at Cambridge University, have my market research company, and I do some consultancy work for Spirits Europe, the European Trade Association for Spirits Producers. What I'm presenting here today is I'm recycling a presentation that I did for the Addiction Conference in November 2022, but I added some slides and thoughts for the Baltics and Latvia in particular, because it's linked to this presentation. And by the way, please interrupt me whenever you feel like, and you don't, or if you have a question or whatsoever. So the title is Per Capita Alcohol Consumption and Alcohol-Related Harm. What I do is an analysis of long-term evidence from On the one hand, Nordic countries and Mediterranean countries. I will explain further on why I opted for those two regions. Now let's see if I can skip the slide. Yeah, it works. So here, what is the research question? It is about the total consumption model or public health approach, or sometimes called population-based approach, to tackle alcohol-related harm. And I wanted to show a look at what is the empirical evidence in support or against this approach. And just for those who do not know what the population-based approach is, it goes back to Lederman, Skogs, so I bear you or will not go into the details, but in principle, it's the idea that per capita alcohol consumption is linked to problem consumption. And if it's linked to problem consumption, then it's also linked to alcohol-related harm. In other words, if we reduce per capita consumption, you also should reduce problem consumption and hence reduce alcohol-related harm. This is the principal idea behind that theory. There are alternative theories, of course, that I can mention here briefly. That's the harm reduction theory that say there is not a link between those two, and we need to promote or target risky drinking patterns. But coming back, where does it come from historically? It's from the in countries of a Calvinist, Protestant background and tradition, where you have, in principle, a reservation against any alcohol consumption. And the aim was to control and protect the citizens from a potential harmful substance, that is ethanol. That is in Nordic countries, the tradition. Also in the Baltics, by the way, to some degree. So what are the perfect measures then is to introduce, for example, price policy measures, but also other population-wide measures that impact the entire drinking population. And you want to reduce the drinking of the average drinking in the population, because that is supposed to reduce problem drinking. Then you have other countries, the Mediterranean countries, but also Austria, Germany would be part of this country mix. You have mostly Orthodox or Catholic background, and citizens usually have a tolerant attitude towards alcohol consumption. They usually believe and thought it's compatible with a healthy lifestyle, and hence they would say, no, we need to, it's not the addictive substance that needs to be controlled, it's the behavior. We need to help those who have a problem, those with risky drinking patterns, but the wider, greater society doesn't have a problem. So whatever measure we do to minimize alcohol-related harm should be based on the proportionality principle, basically not to take away the pleasure of consuming alcoholic drinks in a society, which is, as they say, compatible with a healthy lifestyle. So this is interesting. This is why we have this comparison. We have different cultures, different historical backgrounds. In the Nordic countries, we had monopolies in the past, and we still have them. They had prohibition and strong temperance movements, whereas in Mediterranean Catholic countries, the temperance movements were not existent, had no impact. So it's a very different cultural setting. Now, what is the method that I chose? It is a backward-looking, a posteriori approach. So I use long-term trend data and descriptive statistics, as well as a comparative analysis. So I try to compare and contrast Nordic countries, in this case, to Mediterranean countries. And why did I choose this kind of method? I think we can learn from history. This is important, and I think it also complements what is nowadays trendy, namely all kinds of modeling studies and forecasting studies. So I give you example, the OECD, they did a model recently that tries to predict what's happening in the next 30 years. I think in Latvia, they also had a recent modeling study. Maybe it's not predicting 30 years, but only less time in the future. But what is important that everyone needs to know is a model relies on many assumptions, and it's only as good as the assumptions as the input. And most importantly, if a model wants to come up with realistic, real-life findings, it requires a lot of stability. It's like an experiment. When you change something here, something happens there. You have to isolate things, for example, whether it's a price or whether price elasticity shouldn't change, whether you change advertising regulation or whatever. But this stability maybe can be artificially created in an experiment, but in real life, what is inherently in our social world is change, constant change. It's constantly changing. And here I'd like to use a quote from Galbraith, a very famous economist, who says the only function of economic forecasting is to make astrology look respectable. This is an extreme position, but I think he gets a bit to the point. Now we'll go to the main findings. So you can afterwards fall asleep if you want. Main finding is first the affordability. I hope you know what affordability means. It's how much how cheap alcoholic beverages are, basically, how much I can afford. That depends not only on the price of alcoholic beverages, but also on your income. So it basically can be that the prices increase, but if your income increases even more, then alcoholic beverages are more affordable, become in relative terms cheaper to you. So what I find is that the affordability had no or extremely little impact on overall average per capita alcohol consumption. And here I give you a couple of cases here. As you see, the Mediterranean country is a case country. In Greece, for example, you see that, and here I use GDP per capita, real GDP per capita as an approximation for income. We see that it has increased massively. At the same time, overall per capita consumption has declined. And in Italy, again, you see an 80% increase in GDP per capita. At the same time, a massive decline in alcohol consumption. In Sweden, the yellow dotted line shows at the moment, that's the latest data we have from WHO, is 2019. The level of consumption in 2019 is similar to the level of consumption in 1975, but real GDP doubled at the same time. So it's much more affordable to consume, but people consume the same amount in Sweden. And Norway, similar case, 88% increase in income. Consumption is the same as in the 1980s now. This is another way to illustrate and that you see what's happening. It's a bit complicated, so I keep it short, but the green line shows it is an index. So and it starts in 1996, because this is where we have data available. From 1996 onwards, you see how income has increased, the green line. The gray line with the dots shows how prices for alcoholic beverages have increased. And you see in the orange line, it's the inflation rate. In other words, prices in Sweden has always and consistently increased above the inflation rate. So it's more than the inflation rate. It's not just covering the inflation rate. And the black line below shows you how per capita consumption has evolved. It basically remains stable. And this I show for other countries as well. It's always a bit, you see here increase, a drop in GDP. This is due to the crisis, obviously. But you also see that the price levels jumped up, especially after the crisis, the gray line. Here per capita consumption, this is recorded consumption, slightly declined. If you look at total consumption, it has increased because the unrecorded alcohol consumption increase after the crisis makes now almost 50% of total alcohol consumption, 46%. So this is for Malta again. I skipped that. Now, the second important finding, so the first one is the affordability had little or no impact on average per capita consumption in all 6 countries analyzed in this study. And the second important finding is that the level of per capita alcohol consumption and the trends, whether it goes up, down, or remains stable, is unrelated to drinking patterns and harm indicators, such as what I looked at is heavy episodic drinking. This is a usual harm indicator, underage drinking, drink driving deaths or life expectancy, and several chronic diseases. I give you only a couple of illustrations. What do you see here? So here you see Sweden in the yellow bar is Sweden's total consumption, per capita alcohol consumption, 2010 to 2016. You see that it declined. And you see also that heavy episodic drinking, the yellow line with the black dots, has also declined by 6.1%. And in Italy, in contrast, you see that total per capita alcohol consumption has increased from 2010 to 2016, but heavy episodic drinking has declined even more in Italy, and it is at a lower level on top. So we have a declining trend in heavy episodic drinking in both countries, irrespective of the level and the trend in per capita alcohol consumption. Now here is the summary of the 6 countries that I've analyzed. You see the orange bar going down, that is heavy episodic drinking in all the analyzed countries. But per capita alcohol consumption, you see in Finland, Norway, and Sweden, it declined, whereas in Malta, Italy, and Greece, it increased. But one of the biggest an interesting case is Greece. You have an increase in total consumption, but quite a massive decrease in heavy episodic drinking. Also in Finland, on the other way, where you see a massive decline in heavy episodic drinking, which coincided with a decline in per capita alcohol consumption. And at the same time, it's interesting to look now at GDP in order to indicate the affordability. So in Finland, alcoholic beverages actually became more affordable, but nonetheless, per capita consumption declined. In Malta, for example, it became more affordable and increased. In Italy, it became less affordable, but nonetheless increased, the same in Greece. And you see it goes in all directions. Then with underage drinking, again, what you see here is that people who reported drunkenness by 15 and 16-year-olds, that's a survey regularly done by SBAT, And you see now in those countries, 90% of the 15 to 16-year-olds say they have never been drunk in the last 13 days. Never, you know, and that starts in Finland. You can see in 1995, it was roughly 50%. Now it's 90% or close to 90%. I can't see it because my screen is there. In Italy, it's almost 90%. It was always a relatively high. In Greece, it's also 90%. How about drink driving deaths? Basically, in all countries, you see a declining trend in drink driving deaths. And lastly, on life expectancy, this is the Swedish case. You see an increase in life expectancy quite independently of the levels and trends in per capita alcohol consumption. So all this is counter the population-based theory, because it should always go in the same direction. Here is the case of Greece. Again, life expectancy is on an increase. At the beginning, that coincided with an increase in consumption and then with a drop. In Finland, again, you may even infer, if you look at this association, you would say the more people drink, the higher the life expectancy. Obviously, that's not what you would do, but this is what the chart shows. So, what is a conclusion is when I talk about policy measures, I can infer that whether you have restrictive policy measures, as in the Nordic countries with monopolies, extreme high taxation and availability restrictions. In Norway, you have a complete ban of advertising, compared to a more laissez-faire approach in the Mediterranean countries. Well, they have no power of explanation. The trends, the harm trends, are declining in all countries, irrespective of the policy in place. So I conclude that we do not have real-life experience and data in support of the population-based hypothesis, and also not much for the Mediterranean. You can't say whether one policy is better than the other. This is a main conclusion. The only main commonality that I do find in all these countries is wealth equals health. The wealthier we are, the healthier we become. So also risky drinking patterns are declining in countries where you become wealthier. Now we turn briefly with a couple of slides to the Baltics, since this is about Latvia. Here I'm referring to a report that was published very recently, I think a year ago, by the European Commission. It's called Mapping of Pricing Policies and Fiscal Measures. And they analyzed price changes in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So it's only tax price policy measures here. And whether this is correct or incorrect, I cannot judge. I rely on the data that they provide. So what we see is, again, the total on the left side, total per capita alcohol consumption in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Then you see when price policies were introduced. So in Latvia, the red one, you see in 2010, 14, 16, 17, 18, which coincides always with an increase in per capita alcohol, total per capita alcohol consumption. This is counter the population-based theory. It should be exactly the opposite way. How about in Estonia? So at the beginning, it increased. So they had price increases, but per capita consumption increased. And then from 2014 onwards, it coincided with a decline. And in Lithuania, again, it's first in 2009 coincided with an increase, and then from 14 onwards with a decline. But more importantly is what happened to alcohol-related deaths. This is on the figure 8 on the right-hand side. So this is only alcohol-related deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. And what you see is basically for all Baltics, since 2001, you see a declining trend in alcohol-related deaths. So it's a good news. You see the only exception is Lithuania. I circled it in black, where you had from 2005 to 2008 an increase, but then again a drop. Interestingly is also that you see that in Latvia, because it's quite good, it's performing better actually than Lithuania. And here you see when the price policies were introduced, first in 2009, 2010. So the declining trend started in 2001, much before any population-based measures were introduced. Here, this is a bit more complicated, I'm afraid. It's just another more recent data on per capita alcohol consumption sources IWSR. And moreover, I inserted neighboring countries here. So it's also with Germany that has a steady decline, a slight decline in overall per capita consumption. And Poland, which you see an increase, actually quite a similar trend as in Latvia. And you see also Estonia and Lithuania has a similar trend. And what happened with heavy episodic drinking in now the Baltic countries, or Poland and Germany? So in Latvia, you see it's a massive decline between 2014 and 2019. This is data from Eurostat. Although, and I indicated it with the red arrow, although per capita alcohol consumption increased during that time period. In Estonia, you also have a decline, a similar level of decline in heavy episodic drinking, which coincided with a decline in per capita consumption. In Lithuania, the decline is less strong, but it is also coincides with a decline in per capita consumption. In Poland, you see an increase in per capita consumption and a slight increase in heavy episodic drinking. Same in Germany at quite a high level comparison to others. Although in that country, we see a declining trend in constant declining trend in per capita alcohol consumption. So no relation at all also in these selected countries. And lastly, I looked at underage drinking. Underage here is 15, 16-year-olds. And looked at Latvia, how do they perform in comparison to the rest of European countries. You see the EU average and for EU plus, so it's Norway and Switzerland, and in EU countries performing worse than Latvia. And also Poland is on the right-hand side, as well as Estonia, Finland, Lithuania, and these countries. So they are doing better than the EU average, so quite a good outcome, whereas Germany is not doing that well. And here is never reported drunkenness, which is a better harm indicator actually. And here the good thing is if the higher the percentage, the better. So Lithuania again is very good. It's more than 90% report that they have never been drunk in the last 30 days. Latvia is again almost 90%, both countries above the EU average. So it's actually a quite a good result. Yeah, I'm happy to take any question, and hope I was on time.
Yes, Gregor, you were exactly on time. Thank you for the valuable presentation. Is there some connection in Germany with Oktoberfest and this heavier drinking patterns?
No, I don't think so.
That's just a light question to thank you for the presentation. Let's discuss what was heard and then talk about the the legislation proposals which are being discussed right now in the Parliament. But just to follow up on this presentation, I have a few follow-up questions, and maybe you do as well, listening to Gregor. I hope that you don't mind if we stick to a professional first name basis, so it's easier to communicate between us. But we saw here a picture of the Nordic countries, of the Mediterranean countries, and it would be lovely if we could stamp this picture on Latvia and say it completely speaks about us in the same way. But I somehow, during this presentation, and that is no offense to you, Gregor, you came with your data and your presentation, it was wonderful, but I was somehow missing a little bit our culture story, the Baltic culture story, and our trends here that we have witnessed, because I think just as a standby, as an onlooker on all what is happening here in Latvia, I think our history is somewhat different, and our culture has been developing in some different ways than in the Nordic countries and in the Mediterranean countries, just solely based on the fact that we have been under a very strict regime in the 20th century. And maybe you could paint a picture, help me paint a picture, maybe what does the data say here in Latvia? What is our culture when it comes to alcohol consumption? Is it what we've heard? Is it similar to what we heard from Gregor, or do we have some differences that we have to keep in mind when listening to this data? Davis, as I understand, you have something to say.
Yes, thank you, Gregor. Thank you very much for your presentation. To respond, maybe firstly to Artis' question or comment, I would like to say that when seeing data and seeing historically in Latvian consumption as such, it's still on a very rough patch. What I mean by that is that when we look at the 90s, we had consumption around 6 liters only. And the reason for that is because in the 90s, we do know that we had a lot of illicit market. It was very high. And if we see the harm that came from the alcohol in the 90s, it was very high. And actually, that again goes back to what Gregor was saying, that per capita consumption doesn't always mean what we are getting in the harm's way. And then when it came 2000s, and especially 2008, I think was the highest consumption per capita number what I did find. In 2008, right in those what we call in the Baltics the fat years, or rich years, yeah. Thank you. We do know that at that point we had the highest consumption, and also what I will maybe say against little bit Gregor's presentation, that was also the year when we had quite big of harm. But when the crisis came in the 2009-2010, we did see a massive again drop in those numbers per capita, but the harm stayed there, you know, and that's why I do totally agree with Gregor that we cannot look at per capita consumption as the one benchmark that we need to improve. We really must look on those other factors like like death from alcohol. We need to really lower the harmful consumption, what we as industry are trying to tackle, and we did see as an industry that until COVID crisis and until war in Ukraine, we saw a much better situation than we had it. Year by year, everything was improving. Thus, I have to admit that sadly, during the COVID crisis and during the war in Ukraine, the harmful consumption has increased in Latvia again. But again, I do think that restrictions will not help. I'll now wrap up. The restrictions will not help, and that's why we need to continue on the education sphere and try to tackle this problem differently. And my dream would be like that we would have also a little bit change of patterns in a consumption-wise, because I'll try to finish. Because I do see that especially my father's generation, a little bit older, they consume alcohol, I would say not correctly, because I have heard from them or my dad's friends that it's better not to consume alcohol at all during the whole month, but then at one Friday or one Saturday you can drink as much as you want, you know, which is wrong.
What we consider heavy episodic drinking.
That is
right?
heavy episodic drinking, and that's harmful consumption, and it's what really can damage your health, to say. Okay.
Yes, Gregor, you have raised hand.
Yeah, sorry, I almost interrupted, I think, even, so I shouldn't do that. But I just wanted to say that the COVID crisis had an impact not only in Latvia, that can be seen in almost all countries in Europe. But what I want to say here, because you were asking about the specific Latvian case, and I'm not an expert on the politics, I must admit, but what I've seen is when you look at the Nordic countries, they were usually cited in the 90s up to 2007 as the worst country, where you see people on the street completely drunk. They had this drinking habit that Davis just described, namely weekend drinking. So a lot of heavy episodic drinking. They were completely wasted. You saw it in the news. So always the Nordics were cited. And then when they go on holidays, you know, they got drunk immediately, couldn't handle alcohol, etc. Since 2007, that has changed. They have become more moderate in the drinking. Actually, in Sweden, the preferred drink now is wine, for example. So they consume a bit more like the Italian, Southern European, Mediterranean style. I think they learned how to live with this drink in a better way. And I see the same happening in Latvia. I mean, and in the Baltics. You come, you mentioned it, you were a long time in the Soviet Union regime, part of it. They had a different drinking style. And remember, in 1985 to 91, it was Gorbachev who introduced heavy alcohol restrictions in the Soviet Union with alcohol advertising bans and in prisons. People were imprisoned when they were too drunk, etc., which had also devastating effects on the economy, on taxes, on illicit production and crime. And they stopped it in 1991. So I think, you know, you have to go a bit into the past and see where the culture is and how culture changes, and that takes time. That doesn't go from one year to another, but maybe takes a generation. And by the way, I don't know, you have to correct me, but Latvia, when they became independent, was around the same period when these alcohol restrictions were imposed, rather draconic measures. So maybe this was the cause that Latvia became free and decided to go on liberty and freedom. But joke aside, it is associated, but probably not the cause.
What I take from both of you is that from great despair comes also a great consumption. If we are happier as a country, it would be most probably better in the statistics as well when it comes to alcohol. But of course, we can't snap our fingers and everything is okay. Zana, from your point of view, what could you add to the Latvian and maybe the Baltic picture?
Yeah, thank you for the word. Well, firstly, I would like to say that even though I'm representing the Social and Work Affair Commission, this is entirely my opinion because the law is still in the first reading and we still haven't gone through all of the, you know, suggestions on what we should and need to change. But I'm a good politician. I have a lot of papers with me today. And I actually did some notes as well while Gregor was presenting. And one of the things that already was what I heard here before was that Latvia is a bit different in cultural wise. I do think that Latvians do not know how to drink one wine glass per meal. And it is very, very connected to our, history. Also, Latvia is very new if we compare it to Sweden, Norway, Italy. We just looked at these examples, and Latvia is just 33 years old. I'm 30 now, so it's not a lot, I know that. And of course, there are a lot of things that we still have to learn. And also, one of them is social responsibility. If we look at Sweden or Norway example, they're much more wealthier, much more social responsible than people in Latvia, unfortunately. But we still have some time, hopefully, to learn and be more social responsible, also when it comes to drinking. But for now, I, as a young person, can see that it's not really working as it is now. So that's kind of the reason why we're looking at stronger law enforcements on the alcoholic beverage consumption law. Yeah, that's just 5 cents from my side. Thank you.
Okay. To turn more to our main points of discussion today, which is, of course, public health and how we could, in what ways we could better get there, and if the regulations proposed will get us there. What is the, maybe from your point of view, Zana, the philosophy when it comes to working on these hard topics in these commissions? What is the philosophy there? Because restrictions, from my point of view, solely subjective, restriction is something which you impose, and hopefully it works and everything is okay, and that, from one point of view, is the easy way, because educating a society demands resources, demands knowledge, demands someone who is doing it. That sounds like the maybe harder way of things to do, with a bigger gain maybe in the end. How is it from a commission point of view? How do you work on these topics? What is considered, so that the audience also understands on what we will talk afterwards?
Yeah, well, firstly, none of us is an expert in alcoholic beverage consumption. Of course, I'm not gonna lie, we probably drink at some point as well in celebrations or having a lunch or something. Well, what we usually do, and what every commission usually do if they're not expert in the situation, they just go through the topic. They listen to researchers, they listen to the ministries. In our case, it's Ministry of Healthcare, Ministry of Welfare, also the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economics, and of course, every ministry in this topic has their own opinion. Similar as we joked in the beginning that everyone has an opinion in football and alcoholic beverage consumption. It's true, and it's even not the same, in the level of ministries. And it's normal. It's normal to have different opinions. Everyone is looking at their own kind of point of view, looking at the, situation from their expertise. So that's what we usually do. We just listen to people, listen to opinions, and I believe it's going to be a very long process in the upcoming, alcoholic beverage law. We did similar law with the smoking, actually, recently. It took us almost a year, and it was, before I came to Parliament, it was there like 4 or 5 years even before discussed. So I am assuming this is going to be a very long road. We also have a lot of researches that we have to go through. One of them is from Ministry of Health. I have a lot of numbers here as well. And of course, what they are presenting us is that alcohol consumption in general has risen quite a lot. The restrictions that we do have now is not really working and helping. Of course, it's also, it's connected with the social level of the people in Latvia. Like, if your incomes are higher, you probably consume less alcohol because you have less problems. That's just my subjective opinion, But in general, that's what it seems if we look at the data. But in general, the situation is quite harsh if we look at the data that the Ministry of Healthcare has provided us. One of the things is that every year we lose around 600 million euros just because of alcoholic, beverage consumption. And of course, it's all the things connected. So it's the law enforcement, so direct and indirect costs as well. So it's connected. Yeah, where I was. So I think, well, basically, just to remind, we're not experts in the situation. So it's really good to have these kind of discussions, to hear researchers, to hear the people that are connected with alcoholic beverages as well, because the thing that we are doing in the parliament, we're not doing anything to harm people. We're trying to do quite the opposite.
And which is also important, which coincides with what Gregor said, that consumption is, I don't know if it's correct to say, is a right for a person in some way when it comes to a somewhat responsible level. So as I understand, we have come to the current proposal of restrictions because there's a notion that something is not working. Some might say it's the legislation. What are some other maybe reasons why we are here today discussing what we will discuss, the specific legislations, maybe a viewpoint from the industry, what has led to this discussion today?
Well, I think this discussion would be one way or another. It would happen because, I mean, as Zana mentioned, this law project on alcohol restriction, I think, has started since 2018 or 19, I might be mistaken. And then during the COVID, it was quite quiet because ministry was busy with dealing with the COVID. But, I mean, I think we have many approaches of how we can tackle this. I think it's also my opinion, probably also the industries, is that we, especially now, we put too much emphasis on the restrictions, and we do see that the restrictions are not working. As also Zana mentioned, Ministry of Health came to the Parliament and said, hey, restrictions that are the ones until now are not working quite good. What should we do next? And Ministry of Health is coming again with new restrictions, and we as an industry see that, hey, I mean, what happened to the previous restrictions? Why are they not working? Because you said they are going to work, and if we are going to have these new restrictions, what is the outcome that we are going to have in 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years? I have seen the presentation from the researchers from the Biceps, which researched this Ministries of Health research, and they did some acknowledgements of what are going to be the possible benefits for the sort of society. I mean, percentage-wise, but they are still not saying when and how much, because they are saying how much, but they don't specify the year. It can be achieved in 3-year period, it can be achieved in 30-year period, you know. And what do also I see from what the Gregor said, and what I see with the data is that over the longer time of period, yes, it will improve. It will improve, but it will improve either with restrictions or without. And what we as industry see is that restrictions do make everything much more bureaucratic, and they are not necessarily helping the decrease of harmful alcohol consumption.
Gregor, is restrictions themselves as a matter, as an instrument, is that a way how maybe the governments give a message to the society that they should think about this more? How do you look at restrictions themselves? Because you already, as you already said, legislation doesn't lead to a decrease per se. How do you look at restrictions themselves? And maybe you have something more to add here.
Yeah, it's difficult when you talk about restrictions. I mean, certainly, and this is, everyone is doing it with good faith. You want to help the people. Nobody is trying to harm the people. This is what I assume from policymakers that they do, and I trust they have a good intention. The question is here twofold. First is, where's the end game? So in the end, you see, for example, in Scotland, they introduced minimum unit prices and minimum unit prices for alcoholic beverages and said, okay, this will have that and that impact. Now that it was evaluated, unfortunately, the impact wasn't that strong. It didn't work as desired. What is the consequence? We need to increase the price further. And this is something I see by policymakers. They do something in Latvia as well. They have increased taxes many times. It never resulted in what they wanted or should achieve. They have introduced many other restrictive measures, and per capita consumption continued to increase. So what's the end point? You know, you could say, okay, we restrict further sales hours, make it basically more difficult for consumers to get to drinks, take away the freedom of choice, take away liberty for what you have only fighted in your country a long time, but in other countries as well. And the end game is then prohibition in the worst case, you know, and that doesn't work either. So I think it is the wrong signal to the population because what this approach by policymakers in good faith, good intention to help people is taking away responsibility from the people so they don't learn. And I think this has a negative impact. So it should be the counter approach, as it is from a long, it takes time, a long tradition in Mediterranean countries. It's trying, you know, as a child in Italy, you grow up with a bottle of wine on the table. It's completely normal. You always see it. Your parents drink here and there and so forth. You have to learn, take responsibility. And I think taking away responsibilities from consumers is doing the opposite thing. And the second small point is, I think it's great to talk and have these conversations and say we have opinions. Opinions are good, but facts are better. And if you look at the facts, and here I'm not talking about, and this is what I tried to say at my presentation about per capita alcohol consumption. This is one indicator, but this indicator appears to be not related to alcohol-related harm indicators. We see a decline everywhere in underage drinking. We see a decline in heavy episodic drinking and alcohol-related traffic deaths. Why? Because there's a cultural change. 30 years ago, it was cool to drive a car drunk, and you come home and say, well, I could still drive the car even though I was drunk. That's not anymore. You can't tell your children such a story anymore. This is socially unacceptable. So I think legislation is necessary. I don't say that, you know, we need complete laissez-faire. It's a need to have a BAC limit, for example, and so forth. And it's obviously clear that we need to have some age restrictions, but we should not overdo with restricting, because what we're missing is then how to educate people. And this is the main role, I think, of policymakers is to create a society that is informed and can deal with alcoholic drinks and learns how to live with them and turns to a responsible attitude to drinking.
For the additional comments, that of course it's a combination, and I hope that we have a separate discussion on the matter of educating, because that is not what we are talking in detail here today, but which cannot be lost in translation. Tatiana, I didn't cut you out on purpose in this first part of the talks because you represent here today more of the retail side, the shops, to say in simple terms. You've heard what others had to say here. What is your comment and your view from the retailer's point of view? What have maybe been some of the recent consumer habits, and maybe there's some previous experience for you as a representative of LUT when it comes to restrictions?
Yes, I fully agree that the most difficult and longest way is to educate consumers and also think about wealth of the country. What actually is first, I think, what Parliament and government should think about. And from our point of view, from our sales, we see that consumers are switching to more expensive products. So it's this culture of consumption is growing. So wine consumption is increasing, and also more expensive alcohol. Yes, in some categories we see not increase in total market in liters, but increase in euros. Yeah, so we see that this switch is happening now, and
people are maybe not consuming more in the total amount, but maybe consuming higher quality alcohol.
Yes, yes. And also the graphs, what Gregor showed, is interesting trend that after 2019, probably when more stricter restrictions started in Estonia and Lithuania, we see also trend in increase of consumption in Latvia. So I don't know, do we have some data about this border trade? So because these were the years where these alcohol outlets were open on the borders with Estonia and Lithuania, and also in our stores we see really huge increase in that. So I don't know how it's possible to measure.
For the viewers to understand, with that we mean that there are special shops around the borders of countries where maybe others come from other countries to shop here. Is that correct?
Yes and no, not necessarily, because if we look on the Estonian border, it's more yes, you are correct. But if we see on the southern side, on Lithuania, there are not shops like on the border. But we do see that there are many smaller shops around the borderline where Lithuanians do come and buy alcoholic beverages more. And many of those reasons are that Lithuanians have a much higher excise rate for alcohol, and they also have stricter restrictions. So these two are the main factors that are driving this southern part border trade as well. And that actually is at least for us, it's the hardest part to acknowledge, because we cannot tell what big of an amount is it, you know, because on the border we do see, yes, that shop sells it basically to Estonians and Finns, but on the southern line there is a big mix of Latvians and Lithuanians. So yeah.
You can see it on Sundays when there are closed alcohol sales in Lithuania, so you can check it. Actually, so they are coming on holidays and Sundays.
So no matter the restrictions, there will be a part of the society which will find the means to buy alcohol, maybe going abroad. But let's turn to the specific legislation changes that have been proposed, because you mentioned shops being closed, something being available and not. And one the first discussion point, and we have around 30 minutes to go through the three main points. I think that will be enough time. Sales hours, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the proposed change, the suggestion is prohibition of selling alcohol on Sundays starting from 3 o'clock, right? So you will not be able to buy alcohol starting from 3 o'clock, and on working days and Saturdays from 10 till 8. That will be the time period when you will be able to buy alcohol, right? correctly?
Correct. That's one of
okay.
the...
Maybe, Zana, let's continue with you. How did we come to maybe this specific coining of the phrase, so to say, and what is maybe the believed impact maybe in some documents accompanying these changes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I think it's not a secret that we're looking at the example of Lithuania. Lithuania did have the same legislation changes. They have the same situation in Sundays as well. So you can buy alcoholic beverages only till 3 p.m. So that's something that we checked before, just to see what kind of legislation changes has been in the neighboring countries. And if we look at the data that we were presented from the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Welfare as well, then the situation is, it's much better than it was like year before they did the big changes. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers. I remember that it was presented to us, but I don't have them with me, so I cannot really share, and I can just guess what the numbers were. But I think it was decreasing on drunk drivers, the alcoholic, beverage consumption decreased as well, but of course, I can agree to Tatiana and Davis as well that the border consumption, like border sales, increased, even if we don't have like the exact data on that. Of course, we can see Lithuanians and Estonians going through our shops and buying cheap alcoholic drinks, even maybe not that cheap, but in general, alcohol. And yeah, that's the reason why there is this proposal. But also, just to clarify, it's just a proposal. We are still, discussing on that, and we're trying to find the best solution, which might be suitable for everyone. And of course, ideally, we could watch on the 3 Baltic countries, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, which could, have the same legislation frame.
So we're in the first of 3 readings right now.
Yeah, exactly. And
okay.
that's the first one means that we have this huge excessive discussion, and we're going through every opinion and every offer there is. And I think there were 43 of them. We currently have gone through only like 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. And several of them has been looked at in the healthcare subcommission, which was connected with the time and the age census as well.
Gregor, looking from a side, you didn't deep dive into sales hours in your statistics, but maybe there is some part of research that you could link together with this, because this is a restricting matter, shorter hours, shorter options to buy something.
Yeah, I know this is one of the so-called WHO best buys. And it seems, it's my impression, but correct me if I'm wrong, I have the feeling that especially in the Baltics, the WHO proposals are taken as granted. And I would say take it with a pinch of salt. Why? I think it was 10 days ago, a systematic review was published in Addiction that does not apply modeling, as that is, as I said, this is very trendy, but I'm not very fond of modeling, as you can hear from what I say and what I have said before in my talk. Because I don't give a lot of trust into models. Also, the costs to the society are always models. They come with lots of uncertainties and so forth. But so this systematic review now concludes on real life evidence, so real data that they analyzed, that marketing restrictions that is broadly, it's marketing is a big thing. It's not just advertising bans, etc. It's also linked to availability restrictions. Cannot be classified as a best buy. This is the latest research. The MUP was called a best buy. Now it's basically everyone accepts, or many people, not everyone, I'm exaggerating, but many see the weaknesses of it. So it's also not anymore a best buy. I've talked about the price policy measures in my presentation, and all the empirical evidence, most empirical evidence would not say that this is an effective measure to reduce alcohol-related harm. So all the best buys by the WHO maybe are not the best, but worst buys. And when it comes now to, I mean, you mentioned Lithuania. Lithuania had apparently opening hours as restrictions, but I would, and you say it had a positive impact on road traffic accidents and deaths, etc. I would not, or would be very careful in singling out one measure and say this is the cause and the other thing is the effect. You have to look into, and this is what I tried my research, in long-term trends. Lithuania has, since 2001, a declining trend in alcohol-related harm. Actually, Lithuania was the exception from the Baltics. They had an increase between in the 2000s. And it still has a higher level of alcohol-related deaths than Latvia. So I think one has to look into the context. If things are already on a decline, and this seems to be the case in the Baltics as regards alcohol-related deaths, for example, and drink driving deaths, then one has to be careful in whether it is necessary to just implement and do and feel we are doing something good, because it can do something bad as well. And I give you a case now. That is, if you make it more difficult to buy alcoholic drinks, there's certainly a way around. Namely, people buy many bottles at once and store it at home. This is probably not an issue for a moderate light drinker who then has his carafe and takes his drinks at home. But for a heavy drinker, basically, if you have many bottles at home always there, you could actually increase their negative drinking pattern, so that it's even more available to them. So I think, people find always a way around. And therefore, I don't trust that availability restrictions are successful policy measures.
Tatjana, from a retailer's point of view, what do these hour restrictions mean from a business point of view? Maybe you have seen some trends when it comes to when people are buying alcohol, what times. Does this correlate with the restrictions? Could they lessen the amount of alcohol bought?
Mm-hmm. I would actually asked maybe to check, because we had previously a restriction till this 10 p.m. Yes, did it work somehow? Yeah, maybe we should go back a few years and check, because we see consumption is increasing still. Yes, I don't know how many years ago it was already. And as I'm representing the chain with the smaller local shops, which are mostly regional, and they are working mostly till 10, because alcohol is one of the biggest categories people are buying. So if in our turnover, alcohol takes really big part, and these small shops are working really to survive. Even sometimes, many times, owners are standing as and working there by themselves, yeah, and I believe so they will think and maybe close the shops during these hours, Sunday afternoons, because they will not survive selling only bread, yeah, cheaper bread, for example. But we would like to switch especially and let these smaller shops working during holidays. Yeah, give them people work, give them possibility to survive, yeah, and to also give possibility local people to go and buy food. in these food
To
stores.
wrap it up, changes to alcohol selling hours could lead to maybe changes in the hours when the shop itself, at least the smaller shops will work. We're not talking about maybe like huge stores. Davis, I understand you have something here to say about this.
Yeah, as Tatiana said about this previous cases when the sales hours were limited, I mean, we do see that when we look at the year 2001, when the sales times in night were prohibited, we see that since then, actually the per capita consumption as such has increased. And also, if we don't look that far in the future, we remember the COVID restrictions that we had, which also were impacted especially by the alcohol sales hours in 2020 December and also 2021 autumn. We see there was no change in pure alcohol consumption. We saw that in December we had an increase actually, and in this autumn we had around 2% decrease of pure alcohol consumption. But what I want to emphasize is that I do know that in this autumn period, me and many of my friends and many Latvians were actually leaving Latvia because that was the big lockdown that we were saying. In this year 2020, December, you still could not travel, and that's why you had an increase. But decrease was in this second lockdown because people were traveling away from Latvia because Latvia then had the really bad COVID numbers. But in this autumn, the time sales were until 7, and in this December we had a total ban of sales on the weekends for two weeks.
How does
Yeah, just to add, it was also the time when you could order alcoholic beverages online, so that's something that you didn't mention, but I think it's quite an important topic to add.
And we will talk about online sales in a bit, but industry as a whole, how do the big companies look at these hours? Is it to make or break, or is it something that you see reasonable?
What we have discussed this, and what we see relatively reasonable, I'm saying relatively because it's really relatively, we see that we can maybe restrict a little bit more the hours in the morning. That might be an incentive for people who have problem with alcohol and then are buying alcohol before going to work. But still, I mean, I'm saying relative because, as Gregor mentioned, and as I know, you can stock up alcohol, and actually, if you really want to go to work with a bottle of alcohol, you can do it. But I mean, that at least would be a good incentive, or would make it harder for people who have alcohol dependency to go to work. Before work and buying alcoholic beverages. If we look at the evenings and at Sundays, we are totally against it because we see there is no reasonability behind it. And economically wise, if we look at, for example, Sundays and working days, we do see that the border trade is especially higher on these holidays, on Sundays. And if we limit the sales hour there, it will impact our budget as well. Not only the volume we are going to sell, but it will impact the budget.
If we could move on to the next point, which is online sales and their restriction, then the proposal, which is viewed right now, is banning of online alcohol sales in general. Alcohol would not be available online. As I understand, there has been a period before when alcohol was not available, right? Maybe Tatiana, from your point of view, from some historic sales numbers, have there been any changes when these restrictions have been lifted and when alcohol was available and wasn't available? Do you have some historic views on how sales change?
No, of course, sales of this online trade increased. No, we had it previously during I think COVID times. We are not so strong maybe in online sales, but where we see What influences us at most is this availability and really low prices in these outlet stores, so in these specific alcohol stores, which are growing and growing around. So we are maybe mostly food store, and most of our retailers, bigger retailers, are specializing in all food. Yes, we are offering full baskets. So we do not see such big influence on our sales. Yes.
And of course, Davis, there are other like these outlet stores. They do, as Tatjana said, impact the business by their availability and their price. How does the industry look at online sales? Because today in this discussion we are balancing public health. We're also balancing the business point of view, because we are living in a democratic country where businesses need their place also to develop and grow. So we are balancing between these topics. But from a business point of view, online sales as a tool, as a measure, if they are banned, what could be maybe the outcomes? What could change again?
Yeah, first of all, nearly in all of the EU, we do see that nearly all. We see that online sales is a normal thing, and you can buy and order alcohol online. And also, when we are looking at the proportion-wise of the online sales, it's relatively very low still. The proportion was higher during the very peak of the COVID, because people were encouraged not to go out maybe and to order more online. But actually, when looking at, for example, last year to previous year, we see that the online sales, alcohol online sales, have actually decreased on the online part, and we know that what really is, how to say, what really bugs me in this question is that we really managed to make I think the safest online sales channel in EU, because we have this double verification, and we know, and it's
age?
Verification of age, and it's really hard on online to sell the alcohol underage, which is actually one of the main messages by somebody from the health sector who are saying, no, the minors are buying alcohol online, and it what really pumps my blood in the vein, and saying that.
In simple terms, what are the ways that the age is being verified, just so that the viewers understand?
Through Smart ID, for example, through e-signature, through Verif, the Verif which is used by Revolut for your identification, and there are some others. But
there's like tools that would require an adult to write in PIN code and passwords and stuff, which is hard for a youngster to do unless they've stolen all this data, right?
Even when it's stolen, I mean, I really think about it deeper. I mean, even if you steal your parent's ID, the courier guy needs to deliver it to your parent, not to the minor. Even then, I mean, I think it's super safe, and I think it would be really stupid to ban this channel as such. And especially when we look on the smaller producers, we do see that some of the smaller producers who cannot get in the big retail chains use this online channel very much, and they can manage to sell their products online there. And on those smaller producers, we see bigger turnover rather than those big producers or big wholesalers who are selling much bigger numbers. And also, if we are looking even further, I mean, we live in the EU, and I do know, and I really checked before we had this ban, when I was working on this law project, I was looking for ways to order wine, for example, from Italy or Germany to Latvia, and it was easy. It was really easy. You can ban whatever you want in Latvia, but we live in the EU. And if this wine seller in Italy is selling wine online, and he will deliver it to you. And that actually really also damages damages the compatibility against the Italian sellers. I mean, Latvian sellers cannot sell alcohol here online in Latvia, but a Latvian citizen can buy alcohol from other EU countries.
In a way, we would see money flowing to other producers, not other countries, instead of our small producers.
Exactly.
Right now, I would just like to remind the viewers, you can send in your questions in the comment section. We have one question about education versus restrictions, but maybe we can tend to that at the end of the discussion. So if you have any questions in Latvian or in English, please do send them in right now, because once we tend to your questions, they already need to be in front of me. Zana, turning to you, so from 2013 to 20, the ban was in place, so it was lifted, and now we are going back. What has led to this change of mind? Maybe what has changed in politicians' point of view? Why are we going back to banning alcohol, at least in a proposal level?
Well, oddly enough, this is one of the questions where I'm agreeing with Dāvis Vītols, and every one of my colleagues probably in the Social and Work Commission knows my opinion in this. I don't really see how the online, online way of buying alcohol, like the restriction of that, would change the consumption. Well, first of all, the thing that already Dāvis mentioned, that we are a EU country, so we can order alcoholic beverages from any country in the EU you can possibly imagine. That's first. Secondly, it's super easy to do your groceries from your home with one click. It works not only if you're ill and if you have a broken leg, or if you're a person with disabilities. Of course, people with disabilities do use alcohol as well. Hopefully not too much, but in general, we all know that there are celebrations and they do use alcoholic beverages. They're as normal as we are. Also, if you're a new mom that is preparing celebration for guests or whatever, and it's time consuming for you to go somewhere outside your home, you just do the shopping online, and it's completely understandable and normal. So the proposal is, of course, to ban online alcoholic beverage sales, which is not something that I'm agreeing with. I also spoke with, for example, Wolt and Bolt deliveries, which is quite popular in Latvia. They do offer alcoholic beverages that you can purchase when you purchase a meal. And they said that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, only 3% of their sales is alcoholic beverages, so it's not too much. And I don't really see how the ban would change the general, consumption of the alcoholic beverages.
Is there an argument, just to wrap it up, about online sales? Is there a main argument in the Commission that has risen up as a fuel to this fire?
To be honest, not yet, because we haven't really gotten to that part. Okay. But we are still, there are some proposals where deputies are saying that, hey, we can do the restrictions, but we can allow the so-called smaller businesses to still operate and have this online business ongoing. And we are still, currently in the discussion of the legislation changes. So unfortunately, we haven't had any discussion on this.
Okay, so discussions will be had about this topic, but feels like, from my point of view, there are things to discuss here, because it's not all black and white. I would like, in the last around 5 to 10 minutes, I would like to turn to a very interesting point, which is age, which might actually be one of the most interesting discussion points here today. And when it comes to age, the proposal is to raise the legal drinking age from 18, which is right now, to 20. So 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds would not be able to purchase, handle, and sell alcoholic beverages. So first, as we passed over Gregor in the previous question, maybe Gregor, from this point of view, how do you look at age restrictions as a measure? Have you seen some maybe good or bad examples in the EU, how this has changed, or in the opposite way hindered alcohol consumption?
Well, the main question is, if you look at scientific evidence and you say age should be, young people should not drink as long as the brain develops, then you should raise the age restriction to 25. But that is nowhere, and also there's no evidence that light drinking, moderate drinking damages your brain even when you're young. Now, the point is, I would ask you, at what age are you allowed to vote in Latvia? Or at what age are you going to military service in Latvia? I guess it's 18 or maybe 16 even for elections and vote. So if I take people to be capable to take a decision to vote for a party or to go into war in worst case, why are they not capable of taking the decision to drink and how much to drink when they are 18? Why should it be 20? I see no reason. And actually, and the data, again, if you look at European countries in, I don't know, I mean, whether the 18 applies to all beverage types or should apply to all beverage types in Latvia, I don't know. But in my home country, Austria, you're allowed to drink and buy alcohol, beer and wine at the age of 16, same in Germany. In Malta, it's 17. And you see that the underage drinking, if you want to, and this obviously is the purpose of the measure, to protect young people from misusing alcoholic beverages, then you see that in other countries you don't have a problem. Even with lower age restrictions, it's perfectly fine, and you have a declining trend everywhere in all countries. So I don't see any need for that, and want to remind you, and back to the topic also on online sales, people tend to conflate alcohol misuse or problematic drinking patterns such as heavy drinking or long-term heavy drinking with alcohol per capita consumption per se. So always you have to ask the question also online, is it associated to heavy drinking? Yes or no? I have no clue. I have no data on online and heavy drinking. I can't answer the question. But if it increases just per capita consumption, and I tried to show this, that this is not an adequate measure. And the same if you look at age restrictions and you say with that you want to reduce per capita consumption, if this is the objective, no, I would say then it's the wrong policy measure. And what we have seen also with young people is that they find escape ways. So if, first of all, they can be more attracted to drink if it's forbidden. That's cool if you do something which you're not allowed to do. The second thing is, and that's what we experience in the US, where you have high legal purchase age. As soon as people turn 21 there, they drink like hell at the beginning. They make experiments and they're not used to learn how to consume these beverages with massive health harms. So I would be extremely cautious on such a measure.
Mm-hmm. That was from your point, from your industry's point of view. What are some things that we should be careful about? What does data show when it comes to 18 and 19-year-olds buying alcohol?
Yes, I will actually pretty much agree with Gregor what he mentioned. But when looking at the data, I see that the younger generation, which is sadly what I see, age gap 15 to 24, is not the ones who are consuming alcohol harmfully. They are the ones actually who consume alcohol more smartly, especially nowadays. In my age, when I was young, our generation, I would say it was different. But
education is working in a way towards this?
Yes, I would say yes. Also, I have to admit that during the COVID and during the war, the situation little bit got worse. But anyways, when we're looking back, for example, 10 years, the situation, especially in the younger generation, has improved a lot. And what actually I also see on the sadder part is that the younger generation actually tends to switch now to marijuana a little bit more, and and I see that marijuana numbers actually, if I see percentage-wise, are actually increasing, and marijuana is totally illegal in Latvia, and but I mean, of course, let's stick to the alcohol. I do see that the age gap is not the right measure as well. And it's totally wrong because of the two main reasons. Because firstly, the younger generation, which are 18 and 19-year-olds, it would be much harder for them to work in the bar, because the bar is the place where actually the young people tend to work on their first job experiences. And if you work in a bar, on a restaurant, especially behind the bar, you need sometimes to taste the cocktail. And it means the barman will not be able to taste the cocktail if he's 18 and 19-year-old. And actually the same goes to the shop. I mean, there are some shops where there is one salesperson. If that salesperson is 18, 19 years old, who will control to whom he sells alcohol? He can sell alcohol to himself.
I saw that Zana was nodding her head, not in agreement with this.
No, just to add, we actually had this conversation regarding the 18 and 19-year-old people working behind the bar and also in shops. And we actually did a change that people who are 18 and 19 could work and sell alcoholic beverages. So that's settled. Yeah, it's not an issue anymore.
So
of course, you cannot really drink the alcoholic beverage when you're a bartender, but everything else is correct.
So, Tatiana, does this change in the age regard, would it and how could it impact sales from your point of view? Of course, as Gregor said, modeling the future is somewhat risky, but maybe there's some data that you can lie on.
No, we see, of course, not the younger generation are the biggest consumers of this alcohol. Yes, definitely, I do not agree. And the biggest problem with them is tobacco, maybe cigarettes. Yeah, but now we will see these new restrictions. But despite legal restrictions, we know that everyone in school can buy electronic cigarettes still. Yeah, so we see their biggest problems. But in alcohol, we are checking, we are following these measures, and of course we are selling only what is legally allowed, but who is consuming then after, after the person bought this bottle, so that's one no one can check.
That comes back to what Gregor said, the responsibility of the society, of the family, of the friends, maybe putting more emphasis on our responsibility and not taking away our responsibility with the restrictions. We have to unfortunately wrap things up. I would love to discuss another hour with you, because these are topics that do impact us as a society, and I'm very thankful to all of you that you have found your time to come here and discuss this. But maybe just to conclude our discussion, because the official discussions on these matters are still ongoing, so maybe there is some how to say, some welcoming words for the next discussions. Maybe there are some things that you would like to put in a bag and send to Saima, some comments about this, where we are going with this, what should be done, and if you don't have an answer to this, then maybe what is some reasonable outcome and some reasonable KPIs where we are going with this in the terms of public health. So either this or that. Let's start with the people here in person, and then Gregor will wrap it up with you.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the discussion, everybody. And what I would like to give maybe as a wrap up, let's think more education and less restriction, and less let's think like a nanny state. That one of my members says we have to sometimes go through this period of education, which takes longer, but it actually brings more fruit. And I really suggest that we, not only as an industry, but as a state, we try to change the culture towards better choice of consumption for alcoholic beverages.
As we have seen some good examples, like when it comes to drinking and driving. We're here, I think, in Latvia, very fortunate with our authority, at least once or twice per year, investing heavily in this campaign, not to drink and drive, and they have been doing it in a successful manner. So maybe there's something to take from that.
Well, if I can add a short comment, as Gregor mentioned, also we overall on 20 years time period, we do see a major shift change toward the big improvement. Still, yet there is a part of society who sadly does this. We as an industry really strongly condemn them who do this. But as we also see now, we have, I think, the strictest restrictions that I can think we imagine, but still we do find some people crazy enough to pull out these stunts.
Okay. Tatiana?
Yes, and let's think not only about restriction, but also about business. Yeah, thinking about not only excise tax increase, but we will face now in March, and we know it influences not only the budget, not only consumption, but it influences business profits and margins also. And of course, we are paying a lot of taxes from the trade, but I think also about growing our local producers, say maybe better quality alcohol producers, yeah, the smaller producers, or etc. Yeah, what will pay taxes, more taxes, and bring more working places.
Sana?
Yeah. For my future self, when I'm gonna listen to this discussion, I think cultural changes comes when there is also social changes, and that's something that we're working currently on in the parliament. And this year, the prime minister as well as the president has declared that this is the year of welfare. That's something that we need to work on to lower the consumption of alcoholic beverages as well. Because why are we drinking? Because we have some issues, some problems, and heavily drinking is usually connected with that and not a birthday celebration. So yeah, and also of course it's for a politician, it's really hard to have every opinion count. It's really hard to have this golden way to understand which is the best direction, but it's also the question of ethics as well. So of course we can talk about businesses and the taxes that are incoming in the budget of Latvia from the sales of alcoholic beverages, but it's also the question of ethics. So of course we're gonna look into this topic quite deep in the upcoming months, starting from the middle of February. So thank you very much for your opinions as well, and I'm gonna definitely tell them in the commission, and probably gonna use them in the commission work as well. So yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Gregor, you have less than 1 minute, and all 100 members of the parliament are listening to you. Please.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would say nobody wants to be told what to do or what not to do. Law and order is not very helpful in learning how to take responsibilities. I would be careful in implementing such policy measures, and keep in mind that you treat adults like adults, not like children. One point, remember, we're always talking about per capita consumption. I want to stress again, this is not the issue. The issue is the harmful use. More than 80% of the population drink alcohol in a way that it has no negative health impact. So it's, and then you have around 10 to 15% who are at risk, and then you have a small minority of 5% who have a real problem. Those people, they need to be supported, they need help. This is something where policy should act. This is the main responsibility. And as I heard before, and I also want to stress, the most important thing is to create wealth, because wealth equals health. Thank you.
That is definitely that I wish to all of you, dear viewers, be more wealthier, both financially and emotionally, and as people. And I think problems then will escape us. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we had the wonderful opportunity to talk and to get more insights on the arguments on the topic of alcohol sales restrictions, which is proposed as a solution for the excessive use of alcohol in Latvia. We examined various perspectives on all three restriction proposals that are being discussed right now, and I hope that we gave you deep insights so that especially you, dear Parliament members, have some concrete arguments, some reasonable arguments to find the best possible solution so that our society as a whole is healthier, and that we can be adults when it comes to these matters and take responsibility by ourselves and not just rely on restrictions. I would like to thank for the very last time our dear participants. First of all, Mrs. Zana Skuņa-Rubene, Mrs. Tatiana Krolle, Mr. Dāvis Vītols, and of course, Dr. Gregor Zvern. Thank you very much for joining us online. Best of luck to you all in Parliament, and be healthy, be wealthy, be wise. My name is Artis Ozoliņš, and I will see you at another time in a different place.